The leaders of Slovakia and Hungary are increasingly irritating the EU with their pro-Russian stance. Politico writes, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán was trolling the West all last week, shaking hands with Vladimir Putin, comparing the EU to the oppressive Soviet Union and promising to delay a new tranche of aid to Ukraine. Politico recalls, now the arrogant Hungarian leader is set to team up with Slovakia's newly elected pro-Putin head, Robert Fico, to make a new attack on the bloc during Thursday's meeting of EU leaders in Brussels, the publication said. In response, the EU is collectively shrugging its shoulders and whispering promises to unfreeze €13 billion in exchange for Budapest implementing reforms to bring legislation in line with EU rule of law standards. Overall, European officials are confident that the two countries' influence is too weak to carry real weight within the EU. Slovakia is such an insignificant country that this will hardly change anything, said an EU official. Similarly, the French official insists that Orbán, too, has ultimately obeyed important EU decisions, despite his theatrical anti-European stance. Nevertheless, it's not easy to dismiss Orbán's destructive abilities. Politico writes, when EU sanctions against Russia were agreed, Hungary regularly delayed the measures in order to extract concessions for itself. As such, Central and Eastern European countries have grown increasingly alarmed by the Hungarian leaders' pro-Russian policies. In private conversations, diplomats from the region wonder why Western powers should continue to share confidential information about Ukraine with Hungary if its leaders' loyalty is primarily tied to Russia. At the same time, the EU has no plans to impose tough measures on Budapest because of Orbán's contacts with Russia, the article said. Moreover, the European Commission even plans to unfreeze the funds intended for Hungary, blocked due to the country's problems with the rule of law. Given the escalating Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the lack of unity within the EU over it, diplomats argue that Hungary is a secondary concern, pointing to the fact that Orbán has so far signed off on all aid packages to Ukraine as well as sanctions against Russia. They also argue that he is more isolated now than at any time since his former ally, Poland's right-wing Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, was defeated in parliamentary elections earlier this month. Sanctions against Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico also off the table. It's better to get him into office rather than ostracize him by cornering him. After all, he will find Orbán in that corner, European experts said.